Alright, I have no idea if you can see me at all, but I'm doing it. I'm driving and recording. Alright, let's see if I can make any sense. If I can put these thoughts together and be coherent at all. And for those of you who maybe this is your first time watching this video, welcome. I am a non-Armenian, let's make that clear, but this channel is dedicated to the recognition of Artsakh as a sovereign state. What is Artsakh? Most of you watching know. Even if you're a new viewer, I imagine you know by the name of this channel, but Artsakh is an Armenian nation right next to Armenia, surrounded by Azerbaijan. That aside, why am I sitting in a car driving and doing this video? I do a video a day, but I'm super busy. I got a couple of jobs. Some of my videos are much, higher production value. I sit in my studio and I read articles and I show videos and I talk. But in order to do a video a day, because of time constraints, I do it this way. But the numbers are growing. That's good. Welcome aboard. I'm running an errand right now. That's why I'm driving. Sometimes it's just after work. I sit and I get my thoughts off my chest. But share this video, subscribe to this video, comment on this video, like it, and click the notification bell. A lot of you subscribers have not clicked the notification bell. That'll help the numbers go up because it'll remind you when I put up a new video and you go, oh, I should watch. All right. So yesterday's video, I was going to try and sit down in my studio and read some of the comments on yesterday's video, which is entitled an email from a despondent Armenian. And that video is in response to the video I did the day before, which was my confession, exploiting Armenia. You have to go and watch those to figure it out. But there's one comment. I think I will do a video where I read more of the comments, but there's one comment I want to address here. One of the guys who responded, clearly a troll that hadn't been on the site before. Oops, there goes the camera. Who had not been on the site before. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Yes, probably upside down. If this is upside down, well, I'm just going to upload it this way and you'll just have to watch it upside down. Where was I? So clearly a guy who, it's also illegal to drive with the light on. It's illegal to record while you're driving. So I acknowledge all of that. I'm just getting this done. I'm not going to get arrested. My moral compromise just to get this video out. He hadn't been to the channel before because he's making an argument that's been made over and over and over and over and over again by Turkish and Azeri trolls. You're so one-sided, you're so one-sided. You talk about the Armenian genocide, you talk about Armenians, you're totally on the side of Armenians. Yes, I am, absolutely. The name of that channel is Sovereign Artsakh. So that's my first point. Yes, I am one-sided. My next point is there are no two sides to truth, right? So we should all be one-sided. We should all acknowledge historical facts because that's as close as you're ever going to get to truth that happened in the past. There's ways to figure out history. I've been working with historians. I'm working with, I'll say it here for the first time, a Georgetown historian. I'm not going to say it again. Well, actually two Georgetown historians. One's a I'm not going to disclose. All of this stuff is going to come out eventually, but you can see that on my other channel, Tales of Truth. But, so I'm working with legitimate historians. Historians, their whole job is to figure out what happened in history. And so I'm working with historians who acknowledge the Armenian genocide. There. That was my second point. There's no two sides. I'm absolutely one-sided. I'm on the side of truth, what actually happened. Then the other point is, he brought up in his comment, is equivalency. Well, he's like, well, what about the Khojaly massacre? I think I pronounced it correctly. Khojaly, I don't know. Which I haven't done any research on, but some of my defenders in the comment section I've seen them write about it, and some of them acknowledge, yes, it was a horrible thing that Armenians did to Azeris or Turks. I don't know. I guess it's Azeris. I don't know if that was a city in Armenian territory that was all Azerbaijanis, or if it was outside of Armenian territory, or if it's the unincorporated area of Artsakh. I don't know where specifically. I don't know when. But by all accounts, if it happened, it's absolutely a horrific thing, and Armenians will acknowledge that. But to make an equivalency, apparently it was over 600 Azeris were butchered or massacred, displaced. I don't know the details. To make the equivalency of that attack on a village to the systematic eradication of one's own citizens. The Armenians were citizens of an empire and were singled out by the government, right? By their protector to be eliminated, literally. So there's no equivalency. And so that's another reason I'm one-sided or just focused on Armenians. But I also want to, this commenter, this is what I want to talk about finally. I thought it was very curious and very interesting. I imagine trolls and bots, they'll pick a new name every time they log in, I guess. I don't know. Or they go to a channel and see what the content of the video is and then pick a name after that. Right? I don't know how that works. But this guy's name, at first I thought, wow, it's coincidental that he picked that name. But then I thought, oh no, it's not coincidental because the nature of the content of that video. But his comment had nothing to do with the name. He was just calling me out for being one-sided. He wasn't getting philosophical because he picked the name solipsist or solipsist. And then there were numbers after it, like 007 space 1 or something like that. So, solipsist. Now, I know what solipsism is, and in fact, it's kind of derived from a 19th century German philosopher named Schopenhauer. And I have an uncle who's a doctor and an amateur mathematician, chemist, philosopher, and he's not a Christian. I am a Christian, and so we have these interesting conversations. And he really got into David Hume a lot, so I read up on some David Hume, and then he went through this Schopenhauer phase, and he was explaining Schopenhauer to me and how essentially the way he was explaining it, I'm like, oh, that's solipsism, and he didn't use the term, but my understanding of solipsism, Schopenhauer basically believed there's no way to prove that other entities exist. In short, right? There's no way for me to prove that anything other than myself exists. It's all will and representation, and that's how he broke it down, that there's this external world that's just a representation of my will, and it's like the driving force, the will to live, and maybe ego is how, was it Freud? Who came up with ego, and the id, superego. So that may be, Schopenhauer's version of the ego is the will, and it's that driving force, and I did a little refresher before I made this video, and apparently he's really focused on sex. And that's a primal urge that all humans have, and evolutionists would say that's the point of it, is just to reproduce. The drive for sex is, the notion or the illusion of love, like what's this love thing? Oh, it's just something to get us to reproduce so that the species continues, right? And so he was in that paradigm that there's no, I don't know if solipsist 007I or 1, if that guy knows any of this stuff, because his response, he's certainly not an English language speaker, not as his first language because of the broken English in the response, but it wasn't a very intellectual response either, so I don't know if he understands any of this stuff. But what was ironic is Schopenhauer, when he was 17, looked at the misery in the world, and that's what my video was about, talking about how do bad things happen to good people, or how could a good God allow these things to happen. And so it was kind of, I kind of think solipsist, it was a coincidence that he picked that name and commented on that topic. Maybe not. But Schopenhauer, when he was 17, was looking at the misery in the world and said there can't be a deity that would allow this to happen. And so that pushed him toward his philosophical pursuits of, he was a pessimist and a fatalist, and and this irrational drive for love is just, a sexual urge, and that's the will that creates reality. Essentially, the way my uncle was explaining it at that one time is, this is probably an oversimplification, but the only reality that exists is what we create, right? That perception, even perception equals reality, all of those notions, pop philosophy notions, that there's no way to prove that others exist. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that if you're going to define proof as a 100%, right? If evidence has to be 100%, then you're never going to be able to convince anyone. If somebody is dead set, or you're never going to be able to convince certain people. If someone is dead set against a point of view, like if I meet somebody that thinks the color red is really the color blue, and I show them that color, and they're like, yep, that's blue, and I'm like, no, that's red, there's nothing I can do to convince them away from that, right? If they're convinced in their mind of a falsehood. And maybe they're colorblind, I won't go into those tangents, but solipsism is a bit self-refuting, I would say, is because all of reality doesn't depend on the individual will. You can't create yourself, right? You didn't create yourself. You can't create yourself. So all of reality is not wrapped up in your own existence. Even though we live that way and we're born that way, we think the world revolves around us. That's actually evidence of, I would say, the Christian paradigm. And this was actually born out in Schopenhauer's sad life. He pursued fame for his viewpoints and never got it in his lifetime. He got more acclaim later, and a lot of people, some people refer to him as the westernization of Buddhist philosophy. So it was about, Buddhism is about meditating, and it's a pessimistic philosophy that there's no real meaning, right? There's no real purpose in life, and that was Schopenhauer. And that's really the evolutionary paradigm too. There's not, for us as individuals, there's no hope for anything meaningful. It's all an illusion for us to perpetuate the species, right? Well, Schopenhauer had this drive for significance. And what that drive for significance is, he wanted to live forever, which is, wanting to live forever is, there's the book of Ecclesiastes has a verse. I wish I knew the chapter and verse, but it's basically, God has set eternity in their hearts, right? Eternity in the hearts of men. Oops! There it goes.